What's up, guys? I'm Alex.
I'm Jason. We're the Table Monkeys, and this is Table Talks, episode 44?
44, yeah,
44.
Correct.
Holy shit.
We're on episode 44 now. It's been a while. Last time was before the Dunville event, so...
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Holy shit, we haven't even recapped that event since
No.
we just put out so much footage and everything.
We had a ton of footage to go through.
Yeah, and then we had the PAL event like right after
Yeah.
by the time we were done putting out that footage, so... Got that stuff up too. Yeah, crazy.
And there was another event this past weekend. It wasn't one of ours, but it wasn't a PL event.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the one we're going to obviously talk about.
Yeah.
It's as cool as Dunville was and as nice as it was to pull at the PAL Canada event. They obviously, nobody cares about those in any way compared to what just happened, which was PAL. Was it in the Ukraine? Is that where?
I honestly don't know.
It was anywhere, somewhere in Europe,
Yeah.
and it was obviously the Dave versus Lavonne headline match.
But maybe we could argue that Dunville was a more spectator-friendly event.
Yeah, that's the first thing we're going to touch on. If you guys watch Neil Pickup's The Fix afterwards, they got into it a bit, and I don't think we could agree any more than we do with their opinions on it, which is basically just that the event to watch as a spectator was absolutely atrocious.
Well, it's like this with every PL event, right? They don't care about the spectator. It's all a big show to them. They drag it on for forever.
It's
the way their
spectacle.
rules are set up, it just drags the matches even longer. It makes them less exciting. And
I would say it's not even puller friendly, really. You know, like I mean, I know there are some purists that would say that it's like it's so pure or something, and maybe at the really, really, really big events and stuff, it can kind of work out that way. But it's. I don't know. I don't want to say it takes the fight aspect out of it, but there's so much lag time in between stuff that I find like it's got to be hard to stay in that like raging like 100% mode, and then also the micro fouls and the way they call things and the way like John was going on about how like they'll stop the match, they'll take the strap off, you'll walk away from it, like all that tension needs to stay on the table while it's happening. That's not just for the spectators, but for I feel for the competitors too. I feel that's part of the fight and part of the arm wrestling.
And you're taking one of the skills of, like, let's say one arm wrestler is much better at endurance and not letting his hand fatigue. Like, keeping in the strap and letting your opponent fatigue is a skill there. And if you take the strap off after every round and give your opponent 2 minutes, or not even after every round, but
just in between a foul.
Gives him another minute. He goes and gets chalk. He chalks his elbow. He comes back and fucks around again.
And I don't see how it makes it any more exciting to watch. Like, I think that the PAL actually thinks that it's somehow more exciting to like see the spectacle of it, of like, oh my god, what's gonna happen next? Like, they're always this, what's gonna happen next? And one of the things about arm wrestling is that it's, especially once the more you learn it, it becomes relatively predictable on certain levels. And it's when the predictable all of a sudden, like, something unpredictable happens that is interesting. But that kind of happens like in the moment on the fly, and they try to like build up this like tension as if it's going to happen all of a sudden, like kind of like with the Vitali and Krasimir match. It's like how they even tried to hype that up was just so ridiculous. It's like, this is completely not a match. Everybody knows this is not a match. You trying to make it seem like this could even be a match is almost like disrespecting arm wrestling in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Anyway, these matches weren't very exciting.
No,
either.
Unfortunately they weren't. And unfortunately North America didn't fare too well.
We sucked at the Istanbul event, and we sucked here.
RVJ is our only last hope. And I mean, I got a lot of faith in him. He's a beast, and hopefully he can prove that North America's got something to stand on clout-wise. But yeah, Dan, Ray touched on it about the styles making matches and how as explosive of a puller as Dan is, he's much better tournament style. And super matches really aren't necessarily his like bread and butter, but also against Irakli, with his back pressure and just his hand and once he's able to get to the strap, which he was able to do, then he's able to slow Dan down so much.
And it was sad to see, like, in a way, that Dan didn't really adjust at all. He did the same thing over and over again. He hit and then goes to his weird shitty King's move that is
Yeah.
not very effective, and he doesn't know how to climb or adjust from that position. And it was the same thing every round, which
it's interesting that there that there wasn't an adjustment, and it's kind of the same as like Todd Hutchins, like how he didn't adjust and stuff, and which I know in the moment you get kind of caught up and everything, and I can understand that, but maybe it has to do with the fact that there hasn't been events and everybody's got a little bit of ring rust, so to speak, or table rust, or whatever you want to call it. But yeah, no adjustments, and it's kind of, I think maybe it's similar to, so I heard Devin was talking about Dave, who we'll talk about next, but Dave's style of basically taking everything. Like Dave's style is, I have everything, I keep everything, I take everything from you, and
I go sideways, you come with me.
And you come with me. Yeah, exactly. And Dan is a very similar style in reality. His style does not depend on him giving something up or letting you overextend yourself in a certain way. It's just dominate, boom. Yeah. And it was clear that to both those pullers, that once they weren't able to do that, they were very, very
fish out of water.
Lost. So Rackley just dominated. Mosier, you lost one round on fouls, which again is always kind of upsetting to see.
I couldn't see those fucking elbow fouls.
So small. Even the first one was not like, you got one thing. I want everybody to understand the way the rules are written for elbow fouls. If your elbow is within the 7x7 pad and your arm is touching the pad, it doesn't matter if your elbow was on the pad or not. So like if you're on your tricep and your elbow is up off the pad by 3 inches, as long as it's still within the frame of the 7x7 inch pad, it's technically not an elbow foul.
Right.
Which, if you think about a top roller like with a giant forearm like Lavonne, when Lavonne finishes a pin, his elbow is way up off the pad, but it's well within the frame of the pad, so it's not an elbow foul. So it's the same thing. Like when Arachne, the first one, it was like him finishing and his elbow went up, and it was like they called that for being an elbow foul. And technically, I don't think that is, and it's upsetting to see matches A, stopped, and B,
and on
stupid elbow fouls. And that, I think, brings us to what they were talking about, the running fouls a little bit. Seeing this event and hearing Neil and everybody talk about the running fouls really gave me a different understanding for why they're good. They're going to end up getting left behind at some point. Maybe they want to prove everybody wrong, and that's fine too. But it's the arm wrestling is a completely different sport than it was 2 years ago already. The pandemic, YouTube, everything has completely changed the structure of arm wrestling, and it's going to continue to change and grow, and that's just gonna it's like we talked about with John. Like if you guys were fortunate enough to catch our podcast.
How sick was that?
Thank you, Uncle John, again for having us on. That was a lot of fun. We can't wait to be back. But yeah, one of the main things we got into was just talking about this arm wrestling league idea that we have, and the idea of making things more spectator friendly, because the way that arm wrestling is going to take a leap and make a big jump from just being like a backyard like hangout thing is when people who don't arm wrestle can watch it, enjoy it, talk about it, speculate about it, and that's not going to happen if you've got a 2-hour event with 15 minutes of actual pulling.
Because it's hard to commit to becoming an arm wrestler or going to arm wrestling practices regularly without being serious about it. So it takes a special kind of person to commit to that. So if you really want to expand the sport and get more spectators, it has to be non-arm wrestlers if you really want to grow it. And to make it entertaining to non-arm wrestlers is very difficult, and PAL is so far away from making that happen.
Think about a sport like football. How many people, a lot of people grow up, play a little bit of football as kids in high school and stuff like that. But the amount of people that watch football compared to the amount of people that play football is like completely like a huge ratio, right?
Definitely.
So the arm wrestling has got to be the same thing, and I think you could say the same thing for a lot of sports. Yes, every sport has its recreational sort of aspect, and arm wrestling can have that too. But what makes all really popular sports really popular is the fact that they have such a large viewership without all those people having to be committed athletes to that sport.
So let's talk about Dave and Lavonne a little bit. I mean,
this is a perfect example of this. This is the biggest match of the year by far. There's so much to learn for real arm wrestlers about what's actually happening here, and it was boring. It was literally boring to watch.
Part of it was boring because Lavonne is so dominant everywhere, and Dave is not a fighter. Dave, this is probably the first time in I don't know how long, maybe since he started, that Dave has been the weaker opponent.
Yeah, on the table.
Table, and as soon as he gripped up with Lavonne, you could see it in his eyes.
Yeah,
he was not there. He was scared. He felt the power. He could not get a grip. Lavonne just squeezed him and was like, "I'm good. I'm good right now."
Yeah,
and Dave was like trying to close his hand, but he never looked comfortable.
Yeah, no, he not at one point did he look comfortable, and I agree. I thought there was the lack of fight was just kind of sad a little bit, but at the same time, I'm sure that what he felt was just like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
But like, you went all that way, you've spent all this time preparing, like hit early, like do something, like, you know, like I know he pulled on him a couple times or whatever, but like, I don't know, just like. Yeah. You know,
and his attempt to get to the strap was half-assed. Maybe not half-assed, but it looks like he doesn't know how to do it well.
No, I was gonna say, like, we were talking about that earlier because we were like, it looks like Lavonne is so amazing at keeping people from getting to the strap, but in reality, Ongabayev got to the strap, Vitaly got to the strap.
Yeah.
I know Tim Bresnik couldn't get to the strap, and now he did the same thing to Dave, which makes us all wonder, like, would Michael be able to get to the strap?
Yeah.
And especially based on how Devin dealt with Michael, once the power level was comparable, it did look like Michael's slip was not as effective as he would have hoped it to be. And in the PAL rules, Michael's slips might get called as pins or intentional slips and losing position every time, because he does really slip out with an open hand and all that kind of stuff. So it does kind of lend, okay, the leagues, like, there is something there, and maybe for Lavonne, he knows that when it comes to the American pullers or the North American pullers, as long as he can keep them from the strap, which he has a huge ability to do so, he's going to win that match. He doesn't even have to worry about it almost at that point. And maybe in the strap, he would be fine too, but maybe in the strap, his hand gets more pumped up. He's just not comfortable with it. There's a lot of pullers I know just that we pull with who feel totally different in the strap, better or worse. And the guys that feel worse, it's because they're not comfortable in it. Maybe the first pull or a little bit, they're okay for a second, but they fatigue quickly, or they don't know how to stop themselves from losing their hand in certain positions and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think all the thoughts that Lavonne is not a good puller, not a smart arm wrestler, are out the window. Yeah. Like the way he controlled and dominated the hand of Chafee from start to finish.
The way he offered that hook in like 3 or 4, whatever round it was, where he was giving him a little bit of the hook there and said, like, come in, and then Chafee ran, he grabbed his hand, said, okay, fine, and then just destroyed his pronator.
Yeah, and even the way he dealt with Vitaly a while ago, where he kicked back his hand to gain more height and then climb over and take his hand. Like, he's a really good arm wrestler, and I think that's because he has grown so much over his career.
Yep. Yeah, it's hard. A lot of people forget the fact that he was like 180 pounds at one point. Like, that's insane, you know? And that's the other thing is, I know, like, everybody jokes about the whole chemical warfare aspect of it, and Devin with his pancakes and all that kind of stuff, and the Eastern Europeans, and how, you know, like, we all know it's blatantly obvious that Dennis was, you know, far from natural the entire time and everything, and it's obvious that Lavonne isn't either. And I'm not saying, like, oh, you know, Dave, you just didn't do enough drugs or whatever, but in reality, like, he didn't really come prepared for who he was going against.
He was 275?
Yeah, 275 and whatever, and it's just, I'm not saying, like, it's like there is a commitment level there, which is what Devin is making the point of. Is that's what he learned when he pulled Dennis, was that, like, these guys are willing to die for this. They're willing to go that hard and that far with it. And until there's another division or league or something like that, that's the game.
Yep.
And if you want to go over there and play with those boys, you're going to have to be somewhere in the same league, you know what I mean? You might not have to be, like, exactly on the same team, but you got to be playing the same game to some level. You know?
There's 125 pounds of difference right there.
Yeah, there's a reason for weight classes, and even in the super heavies, they just showed it as, like, okay, like, maybe like UFC cuts off at 265.
Yeah.
Well, maybe that's and powerlifting, it's 308 is the last weight class before super heavy, right? So maybe in arm wrestling, we're getting to that point where we need a 260 or a 275-pound class.
That's
like, that would be the next one, right? If we're 105, it would be like, maybe you should go to 125, and then 125 up is super, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got Fat Devin, you've got fucking Vitaly, you've
Jerry
got
Caderet.
Jerry Caderet, you've got a big Michael Todd,
Probably Tim Breslin.
Tim Breslin. Those guys are all right at the 275 is like Michael and Dave have to be leaned out to be 275, and they've both. I don't know about Dave, but Michael has been up at 300 before, and the point being that so Michael and Dave now are like the top of the heavyweight division, and you've got Devin and Vitaly and Lavonne, and now look at Derek Smith. Derek Smith is on that. He was 380 almost,
right.
and
Kardashian.
Yes, thank you. That's the other guy I was thinking of. Like, maybe it is true. Maybe we are going to need to divide it there because there's also a frame difference.
Yeah.
Like all the guys that we were just talking about, like Dave, Michael, even Jerry, who's like he's very heavy, like he's fluffy. Obviously at 300, if he were to get in shape and everything, he could get down.
Because these guys are like between 6 and 6'3".
That's what I was going to say. Is they're about 6 to 6'3", where the other guys are 6'4" and over.
Yeah.
Right? So there's a different frame there.
Exactly.
So maybe as the sport grows, it's possible that the weight classes grow too. And like we were talking in our league, even today, I was thinking about it. I was like, maybe the weight classes become 265. So it starts at I think I started at, what did I start it at?
165?
165? Yeah, 165 to 200, 200 to 235, and then 235 to 265, and then 265 and over.
Yeah.
Something like that. I mean, the sport's going to evolve.
Yeah,
and it's
people are
going to
get bigger
spectators.
and bigger.
And as it attracts more people, frame matters. Test your frame.
Yeah.
Frame definitely matters in this sport. So big frames like Vitaly and Lavonne are going to become inevitable, right?
Yeah, so Lavonne just completely outclassed Dave in skill and strength. And, it was unfortunate to see, but...
But it was impressive.
Yeah, definitely super impressive.
What was unfortunate really was just the format and then how boring it was. It could have been much more. There could have been much more drama to it. I mean, just in the whole event, I know that match was just kind of unmatched as it was, but still.
Yeah. BAL events are way more exciting to watch.
It's all there is to it.
A little biased, but
yeah.
Anyone who's come to one knows how awesome it is.
Yeah.
And spectator friendly, and there's a lot of hype.
And one of the things we're taking into account is the idea that a tournament should be structured differently than super matches, right? Yeah. So in the last tournament we ran with the Dunville event, we had that set grip, we had the handshake thing, which we want to work on more, which has more to it than just the efficiency. There's something, again, about spectators and about making the sport relatable and...
easy to understand.
Easy to understand, thank you. Yeah, like... easy to communicate to the audience, right? And for the audience to really understand how a grip works and what's fair and what's not, when they watch two guys just fight for a grip, even as an arm wrestler, sometimes it's hard to understand what's going on. As a spectator, it just looks stupid. You have no idea what's going on.
And we need these matches to go.
Yeah.
Like, we can't be waiting minutes in between matches.
Yeah.
And when we've got the entire event was over 200 matches, so we need to get that shit rolling quick.
Yeah, exactly. And with over 200 matches and under 5 hours with that setup made a big difference. And even in a super match, like if we're going to give guys, so in the super match setup, we like the idea of 30 seconds to get a grip so that people can fight a little bit, and there's a bit of that endurance factor in the setup and everything. But it's only 30 seconds if you're fucking around too much and you're not listening to the ref say straighten your wrist or here center or put your shoulder and all that kind of stuff. Then the ref calls a set grip pretty quick, and we go to the set grip. I think even with that, getting your grip, I think it would be interesting if we asked and tried to enforce that the athletes start with the handshake, so at least they're starting from a fair spot, and then from there they're trying to take and adjust and make their
that does make sense, because a lot of times people will come and the taller arm guy will just set up his hand super high, and there's a guy with a shorter arm has no ability to get a grip without lifting his elbow. And
exactly. So and at the same time, again, because we're always trying to think about it from the spectator's point of view, and as if, again, as I mentioned on the Uncle John podcast, the idea of teaching somebody something who has no understanding of what it is you're teaching them, like the peanut butter and jelly example. So with this, again, if we're going to let people fight after they get their grip to get exactly what they want, at least people can see this is like, that's a start, knuckles are showing, wrists or whatever, and now he wants a little bit more height, that guy wants a little bit more depth, that guy's trying to get back into his fingers. It makes all that stuff all of a sudden make more sense because you have a starting point that is comparable every time, so that's something we're going to play with, and then as we said maybe earlier, the running fouls I think are really interesting. Again, not for a tournament, and a tournament doesn't make sense, but for for a super match, you want to see this match, you want the battle, you want the war,
Yeah.
you want the fatigue,
There's
you
only,
want all that stuff
It's
to
only
matter.
3 wins that count, and we don't want one of them or 2 of them ending on fouls, right?
Any of them, yeah.
Exactly, any of them. We want pins, right?
Yeah, exactly. And running fouls do really lend themselves to that.
And we've got a BAL coming up in a few weeks. A ton of cool matches. We'll talk about in our future table talks.
Yeah, we'll have another one before it comes up for sure. Should we go over list of matches, or should we just save that?
I think we'll save it for now. I've got a couple of matches. We got a bunch of cool matches that are all for rankings in Ontario, so they're going to be super hyped, and everyone's coming in very prepared.
Yeah, definitely. I think the headliner, we can mention the headliner, right? The headliner is the big one, is Tyler Bolzan versus Joseph Spoljar on right arm.
Basically for number 1 in Ontario at 198.
Well,
right
so
hand.
Alan Ford technically still holds this spot, but Alan hasn't really put his elbow down on the table in a long time.
Yeah.
And he was supposed to go out to Vancouver to pull Luke Kent at the TAL event, which was going to be like, okay, if he goes out there and smacks Luke Kent, yep, Alan's still best right arm. He holds it down. So nobody was thinking about forcing him to pull in Ontario before that, but that event has now been canceled.
Right.
So I think that whoever wins between Tyler and Joseph have either Alan has to defend that spot against the winner of this match, or
what's it called in
step
UFC?
aside.
Like interim?
Or they become the interim champion at this point. And Tyler believes that Joseph is the best right arm in Ontario. He wants to test it out, see if see how good his right arm is.
Yeah.
I believe I also agree with that. From what I felt from Joseph, his right arm feels absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think Joseph hasn't had a
insane
tough match in Ontario on right in multiple years.
Well, yeah, I don't know how many years, but recently, like since he's been putting his arm back on the table, his
especially
right
at his weight,
at his weight, it looks ridiculous. Yeah, and so that's going to be a really interesting match. Tyler is super excited for it, super prepared. Joseph obviously as well, and yeah, I think whoever wins that match, unless Alan decides to defend his spot against the winner of this match, I think the winner of this match is definitely the 198 right arm champion of Ontario until beaten otherwise. But yeah, it's going to be exciting to get to put that on. It's going to be a BAL. It's going to be here. There's an announcement on Facebook. Keep your eyes open. It's going to be more or less open. Like things are open enough that if you're around and you can come by, more or less it should be okay.
Message us on Facebook or Instagram for more details.
Yeah. But September 26th, it's going to be a bash. It's going to be awesome. This is episode 44. Table Monkeys checking out.
And if you like this video, please like the video, leave feedback in the comments,
subscribe,
share,
smash the bell, all those things.
And monkeys out.
Peace.
I want to see a top roll, Anthony.
Yeah. Yo, I never knew you could do that. I always assumed you.
Oh, Anthony's getting top row?
He tried.
Yeah, start straight and let him top row.
Okay.
I want to see if Anthony.
Yesterday I did.
Top row.
Top roll.